It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the Coach. This episode of Q&A with the Coach is brought to you by our friends at xmartial.com. Go check them out. Website is xmartial.com and use my code Ramsey10 for 10% off everything on the website. They make great stuff like this t-shirt, the rash guards, shorts, and other equipment you see me wear in my technique videos. It's awesome stuff. Once again, Ramsey10, discount code for 10% off everything. On with the questions. Our first question today comes from Vida Minas. You guys have the weirdest screen name. He's got like 17 numbers after this. Anyway, hey coach, I'm 14 years old. I've been training in judo for 1.5 years. When I fight in the dojo or at camp, I'm really good at throwing people who have trained for like 5+ years. However, when I compete, I always lose to those same people. Even when I train 3 to 4 times a day, I still lose to them. What should I do? Well, you need some feedback here. You should do some film studies. Do some film studies on yourself competing against those people in the dojo and in actual competition. Compare and contrast the two. What's happening? What's different? What's the same? If it's easy to beat them, to throw them in the dojo, but you can't do the same thing in a competition scenario, is it just a mental block? Do you act differently? Do you perform differently in a competition? Do they perform differently in a competition? Do they step up their game? You have to have some context, and that context is going to be a video. If you have, a smartphone with a camera on it, hand it to a friend, say, hey, can you film my match? Can you film my sparring session? The most important person to do film studies on is you. I don't know what's happening in those tournaments. I haven't seen it. You have the unique opportunity to do this film study on yourself to get that feedback. Next question. This next comment comes from Martial Art UK, who says Kungfu has a lot of gi grips because the gi is old-style Japanese clothes. That's a fact. And no different from belt grabs because belt grabs have been around since Mongolian wrestling. That's not a question. This is just a statement that's, not actually a fact, as Martial Art UK brought up. So I wrote a reply to him. I'm going to read it to you. The gi was first used in judo in the 1890s. That's a fact. The original gi had short sleeves. They came up to about the elbows. That was the original gi. Not the original Japanese clothes, but the original martial arts uniform for judo, where the gi originated. It had short sleeves and short pants that came up to the knees. Even the kamishimo the samurai wore had short sleeves. The modern gi with long sleeves and long pants was not a thing until around the 1820s. Sorry, the 1920s. It's much more modern than I let on there. And even then, it wasn't widespread until later. All of the sleeve grips in the gi are a modern invention. They don't go back to the ancient samurai. They don't go back to ancient times. That's a modern invention from the 1900s, from the mid-1900s. The pistol grip, the cuff grip, all of that stuff that we do in modern judo and Brazilian jiu-Jitsu, that's modern. Kung Fu is Chinese, if you didn't know that. And Kung Fu is not a martial art. It's not a fighting style. Gong Fu is a Chinese word referring to great skill, a high level of proficiency in any given field. It's often associated with Chinese traditional martial arts. Because of semantic drift, we say things like Kung Fu movies when we see a movie about Chinese martial arts. How many Chinese martial arts are there? Over 400 distinct styles of Chinese martial arts, and they're all different. They all focus on different things. Weapons, hand-to-hand combat, punching, kicking, hybrid styles, grappling, fighting with a sword, fighting with a stick. A family traditional style like Hongjia or Honggar, depending on whether you're speaking Mandarin or Cantonese. The Hong family style, and then you've got styles based on the tradition some one dude passed on long ago. You've got styles based on folkloric traditions like Yongchun, Wing Chun, which supposedly was started by a woman named Li Yongchun, and we don't even know if that's true. Anyway, there are so many different styles. So when people are like, Kung Fu is a martial art, no, it's not. No, it's not. It means high level of skill in something. That's what the word means. Some people translate it to mean hard work. It's the result of hard work. It's great skill, a high level of proficiency. Anyway, Kung Fu is Chinese. Chinese clothes from that era across the entire mainland, including Chinese 55 minority groups, were notably different from the Japanese kimono, thus rendering any ideas of modern gi, collar, and lapel grips existing in the many traditional Chinese martial arts styles not only anachronistic, but culturally inconsistent. So no, Martial Art UK, that is not, in fact, a fact. Just thought I'd point that out. Next. Our next question comes from Arisnomidisbrassus326. Wow, that's a mouthful. Hello, Ramsey. I have 2 questions. How can I increase explosive strength while not having a lot of weights? That's the first question. Fix your technique. Explosive strength comes from weaponizing weight and gravity. It comes from the falling step. It comes from a trigger step. It comes from shifting your weight from one foot to the other. As far as striking goes, that's where it comes from. Shifting the weight from one foot to the other, from one side of the body to the other. Right now, I'm going to transfer my power from this side to this side by shifting my weight in the chair. It's not a huge transfer of power, but it's something. Now, if I'm up on my feet, I can transfer a lot more power that way. Read Jack Dempsey's book, Championship Fighting. There is a chapter early on about the falling step. And so many people are so dang confused about what that means, even though the information is given quite explicitly. Drop your weight forward. Boom, into the strike. It's not a huge motion, but we're dropping our body weight into the strike as opposed to letting gravity suck us down and then arm punching the guy. Second question. Also, as an art school graduate and now aspiring Wushu and Sanda coach, how do you think art and physical exercise counterbalance each other? Now, there's a long diatribe after this about ancient Greeks and so on, but let's talk about this. Sanda, Wushu. Sanda is competitive. It's a combat sport. You punch, you kick, and you can do throws and takedowns as long as you remain on your feet. Wushu, as far as the word is used in the modern world, refers to sport wushu or forms, taolu, doing forms, competitive forms. It's the artsy-fartsy part of Chinese martial arts, if you will. And how do we find a balance there? Is it useful to do both? I think this is a question a lot of traditional martial artists wrestle with, because in many traditional martial arts, taekwondo, karate, many Kungfu styles, many Chinese traditional martial arts styles, we have forms, we have kata, we have pumse, we have taolu. We have all these Asian words for do a form by yourself, self-practice. And there's such an emphasis on looking pretty, on making it look nice. Does it matter if it looks nice in a fight? It matters if it's functional in a fight. And sometimes that's going to look aesthetic and sometimes it won't. There's more to this question. Ancient Greeks put a lot of emphasis on both musical knowledge and physical prowess, so much so that they didn't consider a man educated unless he was proficient at both. However, it does seem quite naive to think anyone to be fully developed just based on the skills they possess. Proven by the Athenians ostracizing all of their genius leaders and generals in fear of them getting too much power, let alone sentencing Socrates to death. It doesn't seem like their education helped them in the face of fear in the end. Sorry for the long question. Greetings from Greece. It doesn't seem like their whose education specifically helped them, helped who specifically? Like Socrates? Because Socrates was put to death, for example. I'm just working under the assumption that's who you're talking about. Because there's some lexical ambiguity in that sentence. You played the pronoun game with me. I don't know exactly who you're referring to when you say they and them. So let's assume you're talking about Socrates. Socrates' whole life, his whole ambition, in vain because they killed him in the end. Well, he's now one of the most studied philosophers ever. If you are a student of philosophy, you must read and study Socrates. He's one of the most influential thinkers out there. He's influenced the world in a tremendous way. The fact that they put him to death seems a little bit irrelevant. You could say that about any martyr, for example. People think that by killing the man, they'll kill the message. And it generally tends to work in the opposite. When there's a message that's powerful, when there's a message that is true, killing the messenger has the opposite effect. It does not kill the message, it fans the flames. Think about Jesus. Jesus had a message. And he had opponents who hated him and hated the message. They thought, let's kill the man, it'll kill the message. They turned him into a martyr. And Christianity is huge today. They didn't kill the movement. Think about Joseph Smith, the first president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, colloquially, the Mormons. And the enemies of the church wanted to destroy the church. We don't like this dang church. It's different. It's weird. Let's kill the messenger. So they killed Joseph Smith. And what happened? Did they stop the movement? No. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And now Joseph Smith is held up as a martyr and a hero by the people. He gave his life for the cause. Take that, anti-Mormons. But let's work under the assumption that they and them is referring to something else. Okay. The Athenians ostracizing, maybe? All right, so let's assume we're talking about the Athenians ostracizing all of their genius leaders and generals in fear of them, the Athenians, or the genius leaders. Again, we've got lexical ambiguity with the pronouns here, so I don't know what we're talking about here. Proper nouns are important sometimes. Let alone sentencing Socrates. Okay. Anyway, I don't really understand the question. But how important is it to be well-versed in different stuff? How important is it to be a well-rounded man? So like those ancient Greek philosophers, like Plato, for example, who was way into physical culture as well as his mind, exploring the realm of the mind. The dude wrestled. He was called Plato because, as far as I'm aware, you're from Greece, right? So you would know this better than I do. As far as I know, his name was a nickname that meant broad, as in a broad-shouldered, big, barrel-chested dude. Was it Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates who said that a man who is an amateur, and I'm paraphrasing, in the realm of physical culture is really missing out? Maybe it was all three of them, I don't know. It is important. I would concur with that. It is important to experience all the facets of life, spiritual, mental, physical, to be a whole, complete human being. And if all we ever did was go to the gym and lift weights and run on a treadmill and do physical culture things, I mean, that's better than sitting around doing nothing, but it leaves a certain void in our lives. If all we ever do is have our face stuck in a book and nothing else, there's a problem there. There are other voids in our lives. If all we ever do is read scriptures, meditate, pray, go to church, and nothing else, there's also a void in our lives. So, fill those voids by experiencing life the way life was intended to be experienced. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.